Welcome to the Herald Democrat Sports Podcast. I am the sports editor at the Herald Democrat, Jason De La Rosa, and we are in week 7 of the football season. And because most teams have the bye, we're doing a little something different this week. We will recap last week, and we will look ahead to this week. But in addition to this week's podcast and next week's podcast, we'll be talking with the Denison head football coach, Chad Rogers, and the Sherman head football coach, J.D. Martinez. And this week we will be visiting with Coach Rogers in his office. We'll check out how things have gone for the Jackets, how things are going to shape up over the final month. So, Coach Rogers, thanks for joining us.
No, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Normally we meet every week to talk about the season, and this is a little something different, so we appreciate you going along with that. You hit the bye week after 6 games. You're sitting at 4-2 overall and 3-1 in District 7-5A Division II, tied for second place. Depending on how things shake out, you could be tied for first place this week. At the very least, you're in a position to tie for first place next week because the team that you'll be facing next week, which we'll get to in a bit, Frisco, they're the only undefeated team left in the district standings. How would you assess the season so far? You're on a 2-game winning streak. Where are things sitting with this team as you hit the bye week?
Well, I think we've grown up every game. I think we get better every practice, and that's what we tell them all the time is we want to get 1% better every day because as long as you're getting better, you're getting better. If you're trying to stay the same, you're getting worse. So, we try to get a little bit better. I think we've done that this season. I think we had some bumps in the roads, and we realized from the 2 losses that we have of what we needed to do better as a coaching staff, as kids, as a team. And I think they like the way they feel right now. They enjoy going in the film room. They enjoy being in the locker room after a win. So we've had a great week so far. I mean, it's your attention to detail, and you can still coach the same way, but it's their attention and what they focus on as far as it's not what you say, it's what they hear, and what you try to do is make sure they're hearing what you're saying.
The big thing I think you could say about this group so far is the resiliency, because there have been several games where the people you thought might be there were not there for injuries, and it's kind of been that way since the first game. But there haven't been excuses. There haven't been, oh man, we're missing so and so. How are we going to win this game? I think that's probably been the number one thing with this group is that if you looked at the overall numbers, and also like I said you have a winning record and the numbers, the points are there. They haven't really skipped a beat, and I think that says something about this group of players where I don't know if you guys have a slogan or whatever, but next man up or anything like that. But it seems like they turn around and they go, oh, okay, this guy's out this week, or we're going to be without this guy for who knows how long because we don't even know. And they just find a way to get the job done.
Yeah, and early on these guys bought into so what now what. They get a first down or they score a touchdown. Now what? Now what are we going to do? And it goes into life. We talk about life, more than athletics, and that we think athletics and mirrors life. And so what? Now what? So when something happens, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do next? Instead of spending time on what happened, is finding a way to go out and solve the next issue. Because it can be good too. You can have a lot of good stuff happen. So okay, I ran for 80 yards for a touchdown, and I'm getting the ball, and it's the 4th quarter, and we need a first down. So what? Now what? And they bought into that. And I think that's the main thing is that, and then we go through a lot of sayings, keep the main thing, and what we're trying to accomplish. What are we practicing for? Are we just going to go out and practice just to survive, or are we going to go out and practice to get better? And that's important. There's all kinds of sayings. Neurons that are wired together fire together. And then when you got everybody playing on the same page, or do your 111, and you're going to be more successful. So we have a lot of slogans, a lot of things that we talk about because we all have the same language. All the coaches are speaking the same thing. The kids understand the same thing, and that goes back to buy-in. Or they bought into the program. They bought into your coaching staff, and we got an outstanding coaching staff that I'm privileged and appreciate so much just to be a part of that do things right, that care about kids and care about them. From the beginning till they come back from when they're parents. So I mean. It's just we're playing with a lot of confidence right now, and confidence is like building blocks, and you build it each week, and those are showing up in practice. And kids that we're going to get healthy. We're getting healthier as it goes on, and that's important that people get experience, and we've got a lot of experience.
Well, and I was gonna say that's the thing where you talk about that confidence, and when you have some of the injuries that you've had had to make a quarterback change because of an injury. You've had a player who many view as a top recruit in his class at his position at running back, to where he's missed some time, and there are some places that would just, how are we supposed to win without these? Those are key positions. This is not a guy on special teams or something we can kind of hide. It's kind of hard to hide the quarterback if he's not in there, type of a thing. And when you go out and not only does the offense continue to put up points, continue to move the ball, and win games, I don't know if that adds the extra layer of that confidence of, not that you get cocky about, we're kind of bulletproof, or but to be able to overcome that, that's got to say to these kids, hey, maybe we're better than we thought, or maybe the coaches are right. It doesn't matter what the situation is. We are good enough to come out on the other side in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think good enough or any of that stuff, or not to say, you said not to say cocky, and all that stuff is which is right, but that's when you spend your time just looking at the end result. What this group has done well is they bought into is that, okay, this play I'm going to play my very, very best. And I'm going to do the very best I can do, and not worry about the next play, and not worry about what the last play was. And they bought into that. I think one of the best examples is when JD fumbled on the goal line, and then Jose picked it up and scored. JD's the second one there to celebrate with Jose, not because he fumbled, but because Jose was excited because he scored. And I think that shows a lot for this team. They're all excited about the other one's success, and you don't see that a lot. And I think that's what you're seeing with these guys, and they're enjoying being around each other. They enjoy going to practice. They enjoy, and that comes from your coaching staff. Our coaching staff enjoys being around each other. They enjoy going to practice. They enjoy coming up here on the weekends, and I think that feeds off of everything. And like I said, they're young. It's a young group in a majority of the way, and that way is that you're going to get better the more you do something, and you got to keep moving in the right direction. And that's the thing that they're doing well, is that as long as you're practicing well and you're focusing at practice and your attention to detail, and you keep improving with the proper attitude, you're going to get better.
The one thing you mentioned, being young, there were some key guys that you had to replace on both sides of the ball last year. I think you thought maybe the offense, maybe not to this level, averaging over 40 points and over 400, almost 450 yards a game, would be doing what they're doing. You thought that was going to be really good. We talked before the season about, would the defense be able to figure things out because of some of the losses there, some of the new, there's a lot of sophomores, a lot of first-year guys on that group that are getting a taste of varsity for the first time. How have you seen the defense come together? We talked after this last game, which was 62-14 against Lake Dallas. They took a shutout into the third quarter, forced 6 turnovers in that game. We talked that might be one of the best defensive performances you've had as a group here, just based on their performance. It seems like they've kind of figured some things out. There were some bumps early. Obviously, you played some good competition. The two losses that you've had were against playoff teams last year. What have you seen out of this defense coming together, and how excited are you to see what they can put together over the next month?
Well, like you said, there was really good competition. And the good part is that, and I know I harp on it, but they get a little bit better each week. And if you take a percentage of improving, it's going to be a big percentage at the end. So, when you practice, you study the game, because several of them have come from freshman teams to now they're starting on the varsity. There's a growth period there, and there's there's only at times there's only 2 seniors out of the 11 on the field most of the time. So it's not like this is we have 8 starters back who started for 3 years. It's sink or swim, right?
And you guys have had success with that in the past, but sometimes it takes a month to figure it out.
I think, and it goes to, we're able to make really easy offense adjustments because our O-line been there, done that. They know what we're trying to do, and when we're trying to do it, when they do this, they do that. We do this. We're able to make some sideline adjustments. Early on, it was a struggle just because they hadn't been in that situation before as a unit together or as a majority of them together. So now you're able to do that just because they've got some experience under their belt, and they learn how to get into the film room. They learn how to focus in the film room. So, it's all about their focus, and that it goes through maturity and growth and attention to detail.
To touch on the offense, one of the things that's become a staple here at Denison in the last couple of years has been a rotation at running back. It has not been one guy all the time, give him 30 to 40 carries and let him kind of carry the load. You've had some years where there's 4 guys. You've had some years where there's a couple guys. It just kind of depends on the depth. But the depth has always been pretty good. This year you have 3 guys at that spot. Obviously, Jadarian Price, the sophomore that we mentioned before, he's considered one of the top recruits in his class. You have the transfer from Tom Bean and Asa Osborne as a junior, and you have a senior in, you call him Buckets, Willis Bowman. He is on varsity for the first time, and so you have 2 new guys there, and obviously Jadarian had a breakout year last year as a freshman, and then you throw in at the quarterback spot, you started with a guy who was a backup last year in Zaylen Wimbish, and then got hurt, and so now you're with Caleb Hevner, a sophomore. For some people that might concern them, like, hey, I've got 4 guys out of the 5 that are either brand new to the varsity or to the program, or are they're young and they're doing it for the first time. But it just seems like no matter who you guys are putting out there, the expectations have been raised for this offense, and I would assume that's a good thing. But that's also a heavy burden every week for them to be like, oh, we're expected to put on these performances and all these yards. But it seems like every week they kind of meet that challenge.
Yeah, I don't think it's a burden. I think that they embrace it, that they want it, and they want more, and they practiced harder. And we got one of the best running back coaches I've ever been around.
That's you, by the way.
Oh, it is.
You are the running back coach at Denison. That's your position group.
It is.
So.
It is. But and it goes back to the way the games. Everybody says the game's changed. Well, it's evolved a little bit. When I first became a head coach, one of our goals was to run 40 plays. If we run 40 plays, we've dominated. Well, now we're running 40 by halftime. So to get those carries and to get all that, you're not going to have the two-way players as much because they're also running faster. And it's not because we're just going faster, it's because they changed the 40-second clock.
Yeah, tempo is a big thing these days.
Tempo, and that was changed by Chad Morris did a great job with that. I mean, you're going to go fast. So and you're going to try to speed up. So the 2-minute offense is now the 24 before half offense, and it's going to be 48 minutes of 2-minute offense. So we don't work on our 2-minute offense like we used to because it's all going fast. So you're taking away all those snaps. Well, that's why we practice. So when I sit down and try to figure this out, that we have a plan when we do our practice schedules, and we work every running back. So the running backs and when we first started doing it, they'd run 5 yards, find the guy, give him the ball back, run back and line up. Well, everybody else is ready to go, and everybody's waiting on the back. So now we're actually 5 backs. We'll run 4 through, and then those 4 will go through, and then the 5th one will alternate when the other quarterback goes in. So if it's a quarterback run, the other backup quarterback replaces him. And if it's 2 quarterbacks rolls in a row, then you put another quarterback in. And that's just the way that we work it, plus we get reps, because that's what's going to have to happen in the game.
Yeah.
If the helmet comes off and we got to find a replacement, then we go. So the quarterbacks are also getting in-game reps, team reps, and on air as fast as we can possibly go. And then the running backs are too. Now the running backs are running 30 yards downfield every day, so we don't line up every play. So we don't line up and condition at the end of the practice because we're getting our conditioning during practice, and they're held accountable, and they know where they go. Plus, we want them to get used to breaking, crossing the end zone, putting the hand over the ball, protecting the ball, and doing all the little things right that you can watch, and then they get back in there, and they go again. So, I mean, that's the way we've been doing it. When we do our group offense, what we do is we take 2 quarterbacks, and we put another group, and then we rotate the backs, but we see who's the fastest running them. So it just builds in competition with them, and everybody gets reps this way, and everybody wants to be involved, and that's important.
And it's obviously it's worked out. You're averaging almost 300 yards rushing a game. Part of that obviously is them, and part of it is
good?
I think that's pretty good.
I really don't know.
I would think so. I mean, when you're averaging 450 yards a game, and that seems
I
pretty
know
good.
last week it was low. Dude.
It was, but and that was one of those situations where we talked about the defense playing really well. When you get an interception and you run it back for a touchdown, or run it back to the 1, or have a 12-yard punt that puts you at their 15-yard line. Mm-hmm. That's one of those things where you look at the box score from last week and that 62-14 win over Lake Dallas. Lake Dallas has more yards because their starting field position is much deeper in their own end, and if they go 60 or 70 yards before they turn it over, that's a lot more yardage than if you get the ball at their 12 and score in 2 plays.
Which is a tribute. The long field is a tribute to our special teams.
Yeah,
our special teams are playing better. Rockstar.
Yeah, Reese Stank. He's got 7 field goals.
Yeah, he's kicking off well. The kickoff coverage is is really they're taking a lot of pride in special teams, and when you take pride in something, you're going to be better at it, and they're practicing better at it. That stuff's important.
Yeah, it's been really good, and you have a month left. After the bye week,
hopefully longer.
Hopefully, guaranteed at least a month. I think I have the order right. It's Frisco, Memorial, Lovejoy, Braswell to finish out the season, and 3 of those 4 are among the top 5 right now. Frisco is, like we mentioned, is the only undefeated team. Lovejoy's in the mix, and Braswell only has 1 loss as well. So. It's going to be interesting down the stretch. I think last year, Braswell was not at this point. They were kind of trying to get in at the end, as opposed to kind of being in the mix. But Frisco was a playoff team last year, and Lovejoy was a playoff team last year. It's going to be an interesting final month for you guys. Obviously, if you get in, you're definitely gonna earn it. And I think you guys think you have a pretty good shot. Hopefully, it doesn't come down to that last week, but. With this district, we've already seen some interesting scores. You guys beating Lake Dallas last week was a change from last year, and that could happen this week while you guys are hanging out and kind of watching to see who beats who and how that would change things for you guys. What do you expect over this final month?
I think it's just to get better every day. What I expect. What I expect, I leave to you, to the media guys to write. But what the high expectations, and we have high expectations for ourselves. So
it won't be very tough to get these guys up for any of these games because,
it shouldn't be.
Especially if you're in the hunt for a district title, which
is our goal. And that's one of their goals that they wrote. We just need to keep doing what we're doing, and go. Offensively, we need to keep getting. I tell all the running backs all the time. There's crumbs out there. There's inches out there. Go get them. Go make a meal out of the crumbs. There's a hidden yardage out there. Can we get a little more effort to get it? And defensively, force the turnovers.
I would think too. Last year going into the last week, it was you guys didn't control anything. You had to win, but you also needed help here and there. Right now, I think it's easy to tell the guys. As long as, like you said, focus on us, we prepare and focus and all that. Because if you do what you do, then you don't have to worry about it. And I think that, you don't want to be in a situation like a Princeton or a Lake Dallas right now where it's not only do we have to win over this final month, we need A to happen, B to happen, C to happen, and in some cases, D, E, and F just to have a chance. As long as you guys keep winning, you're in good shape. So you don't have to really sit and look and say, okay, we need Team A to beat Team B, or we need to get the tiebreaker over so-and-so.
As long as we keep doing what we're supposed to do, and we keep practicing the way we're doing, and we limit our distractions, we keep getting more and more confident every day. We'll be the team that you don't want to play. And that's what's important is if your confidence is high because you're earning it in practice. You're taking care of keeping the main thing. We're talking about the daily routines. We're talking about the focus. We're talking about the energy of practice, the energy that goes to the games, and the carryover. Just all that stuff will take care of itself on Friday nights, just like it did against Lake Dallas. Princeton, I think was an introduction to what we could do. And then all of a sudden we thought, oh, wait, is that really us? And then they kind of got on our heels a little bit. And Princeton's not a bad football team. I think they're a good football team. And then they go down and put the ball in the end zone. And then we start thinking, well, then against Lake Dallas, we carried out, was a more complete game than the week before. So if we keep doing that, and our goal is to keep putting complete games together, and everything's going to be fine. But you know, and I think you and I talked about this. We'll kind of bounce around a little bit. Was our offense does go so fast, so it's a very unique deal. Was that, you know, last year we were playing Frisco, and you saw it with Lake Dallas this time that the D line will say, "Hey, you fall down," so they fall. So they'll fall down, then they'll come back in the next play, and the refs were going, well, that's borderline, you know, unsportsmanlike, or they can call not delay a game and stuff like that. But our offensive line starts thinking, hey, that's pretty good. So it's starting to give them energy, because the only way they can stop us is to try to disrupt us, is to lay down. And some are legit hurt. So
and when the bad thing too on that, you know, to flip that is, you know, like you mentioned in the olden days, which are not really that far ago or far back ago, teams wanted to run 7 minutes, 8 minutes off a clock, and now you don't do that. So if you're a team that scores over, you know, 40, 50, like the past 2 weeks you scored 52 and 60, 52 and 60 points a game, that just gives more opportunities to the other team's offense, and so shutouts don't happen a whole lot. You can give up 3 or 4 or 5 touchdowns and still beat somebody pretty badly, because, you know, before you would score 50 points, but you would have the ball almost the entire game and not give the other team a chance, and when they went 3 and out, that would be it. And so the tempo in the game has changed to the point where you can win a game 52-31, and that kind of looks close, but it's really not.
Right.
It's really not that close. And teams, I think too, are not as willing to kind of turtle and just be like, okay, this game's over. Like, they're not that they weren't trying before, but some teams, it seems like a lot more teams nowadays will throw the ball in situations where it would just be like, okay, just run the ball 3 times, run the clock. Nobody does that anymore. We're gonna take advantage of every snap, every throw, and it's definitely changed the game. But you guys have adapted well to that, and we'll see what happens over the final month. And I know the guys are looking forward to getting back to the playoffs after coming up just short on the tiebreaker last year.
We haven't even talked about it. We're spending this week talking about Frisco High, and you know, and they're enjoying practice, which you can tell in an open week. It's cooled off. So,
yes, that's always that's a nice thing. So by the time you guys get back on for a game, people will be wearing hoodies and everything else.
Yeah, we showed up for practice wearing a hoodie and stuff this morning. So I thought, oh my goodness, it's not even cool.
Well, the way the weather's looking this Friday, I don't know if I would want to play at all. The way they're talking about in the 40s and raining and
that's football weather.
Yeah, but when you go from 90 something,
you're in the press box.
It doesn't affect. I'm not saying it affects me. I'm saying I don't know if I'd like to go from 95 to 45 in 1 week. Maybe kind of gradually get into that. But Coach, I appreciate the time here. Enjoy the rest of the bye week, and we'll see what happens next week against Frisco.
Thanks, Jason. We sure appreciate you.
And now let's look at this week's games and recap the action from last Friday. Like we mentioned, this is a big week for buys, so as we go down the list, there won't be as many games to preview. To that point, starting in District 7-5A Division 1, Sherman has its bye this week. They are coming off a 44-21 loss against Mesquite Poteet, so they entered their bye at 3-3 overall and 0-2 in district play. They will sit out this week and try to reassess as they enter the final month. They are tied with Texas High and Wiley East. All those teams are 0-2, while McKinney North and John Tyler are 2-0. West Mesquite and Mesquite Poteet are 1-0, and we'll see what the action looks like after this weekend as the Bearcats sit out. In the loss to Poteet last week, to touch on that real quick, it was 17-7 at halftime. And it was a decent game, even going into the fourth quarter. It was only a 24-7 deficit for the Bearcats, but they weren't able to keep pace. And then things got a little more interesting in the fourth quarter. A lot of back and forth, but unfortunately Sherman wasn't able to pull off a comeback there. So they're sitting at 0-2. They were 1-1 at this point last year, so not too much of a difference. They do have Texas High is their next opponent. That's a long road trip when they get back to action on the 18th. And they have Wiley East coming up as well. So if you beat those two, ultimately it'll probably come down to that game against West Mesquite, with the winner being in and the loser being out, depending on how the rest of the schedule shakes out there. In District 7 5A Division 2, as you just heard with Coach Rogers, Denison is on the bye. They are tied with Frisco Reedy at 3-1 in second place. And they are coming off that 62-14 victory against Lake Dallas. It was 24-0 after the first quarter. It was 38-0 at halftime. The big numbers from that one: Asa Osborne led the way in rushing. He had 3 touchdown runs, 19 carries for 104 yards. Caleb Hevner had 8 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown. Jadarian Price had 18 carries for 78 yards and a touchdown. A lot of the action in this game came on the ground for the Jackets. They had 342 yards overall, and only 3 of that was through the air. So very ground-oriented attack. Jose Caneo recovered a fumble in the end zone. Jacalyn Fields recovered a blocked punt in the end zone. And Keelan Vaughn returned an interception, 36 yards for a touchdown. So Jackets scored often. They scored in a lot of ways. That was a good way for them to go into their bye week. They're going to wait to see what happens. The big matchup this week, Frisco is in first place and undefeated, and they're at Lake Dallas. If Lake Dallas can somehow bounce back and pull off that upset, then Denison would have a chance to slide into first place, and depending on what Reedy does. At worst, Denison has a chance to pull even with Frisco if the Raccoons somehow win this week. So we'll see what happens there. The next game on the schedule is Whitesboro at Bowie in District 4 3A Division 1. Whitesboro's coming off a 45-24 loss against Pilot Point, while Bowie's coming off a 67-7 loss against Brock. This was a game last year that Whitesboro won 43-0. Bowie is 0-5. They had the district bye, and then they lost, like we said last week. Whitesboro's 3-3 overall, and they're 1-1. They're the same spot that they were at last year. They opened with a win at Paradise, and then they lost against Pilot Point. So we will see what happens in that one. It should be a Whitesboro win, just based on the fact Bowie has not really played anybody close. They've lost 8 straight games dating back to last season. And none of their games have been close so far this season. So it would be a good chance for Whitesboro to get back in the win column after that loss against Pilot Point. And that was a game, much like Sherman's game, through 3 quarters. It was a close game. It was 24-21. Pilot Point was leading after 3 quarters. Whitesboro actually tied it on a Jorge Montes field goal early in the 4th quarter, but then Pilot Point pulled away. They scored 3 times. In the latter stages of the 4th quarter to break that game open. But it was pretty close, and last year's game against Pilot Point, came down to a field goal at the end. So that's not surprising that the Bearcats, the Battle of the Bearcats was able to be pretty close, at least through the 3 quarters. Devin Price led Whitesboro. He had 23 carries for 116 yards and a touchdown. Tristan Gaines caught a 60-yard touchdown pass from Jake Hermes. And that was another game where a lot of the action was done on the ground. The thing that hurt Whitesboro really was they couldn't stop Pilot Point's ground game. Those Bearcats ran for 355 yards and basically got almost all their touchdowns in that fashion. So I'm sure that's going to be a point of emphasis this week, getting ready for Bowie. In District 5 3A Division 1, all 3 of our local teams do have games this week, and one of them involves 2 of them, as Howe travels to Pottsboro. Howe is sitting at 2-4, 1-1 after their 55-28 loss against Emory Reigns, while Pottsboro continues to roll along. They're 6-0 and 2-0 after they beat defending district champ Van Alstyne 48-27. This was a game last year that Pottsboro won 27-0, and Pottsboro's won 8 straight against Howe and 11 of the last 12. So that's a trend that is in the Cardinals' favor. They are the only undefeated team left in the district standings, so they have the inside track to winning the district title. This is a key early matchup because Van Alstyne, Howe, Reigns, and Commerce are all sitting at 1-1. So if Howe's able to pull off this upset, that'd go a long way for them to get back to the playoffs. They're already ahead of schedule compared to last year when they didn't win a district game. So we'll see what happens there. In that Pottsboro win last week, that was a game where Pottsboro was only up 21-14 at halftime, and then they scored twice in the third quarter, kind of break that game open a little bit, get some breathing room. Cy Shope was the main attraction in that one. He had 23 carries for 157 yards and 5 touchdowns. He also caught 3 passes for 76 yards and a score. And Braden Plyler added a quarterback keeper in the second quarter to account for all Pottsboro scoring. So the Cardinals are rolling. They've scored at least 48 points in 3 straight games. If they get to 48 or more this week, that'll be the first time in program history that they've scored at least 48 points in 4 straight games. So Pottsboro's really rolling along, and they're in a really good position for the district championship. How, like we said, they're trying to bounce back. They had that big win over Bonham to open district, put up 66 points. They still scored 28 points, which is good, but unfortunately a bad second quarter is what did them in against Rains. It was 7-7 after the first quarter, and you're thinking things are going pretty well. And then Rains put up 4 touchdowns in the second quarter, and it was 35-14 at halftime. And that was basically the difference because the second half they pretty much matched score for score there. So things kind of got away from the Bulldogs there in the second quarter. That was another game where Rains really dominated on the ground. They had 374 yards rushing. And like I said, how didn't struggle really. I mean, they put up 416 yards of offense, and it was pretty even. It was 215 passing with Austin Haley completing 13 to 24 passes, and they had 201 yards on the ground. They just weren't able. That one bad quarter is kind of what did them in. Jalen Thornton finished with 25 carries for 177 yards and had a touchdown. Brandon Williams ran for a touchdown. He also caught a touchdown pass. Colby Winden had a touchdown pass, a catch. So the offense is better at how. It's going to be really tough this week. Pottsboro's second in the area in defensive yards allowed to Gunner. So they'll have their work cut out for them there. And the other game in District 5-3A, Van Alstyne's at Lone Oak. Van Alstyne's trying to bounce back from that loss against Pottsboro. Lone Oak opened with the district bye, and then they lost last week to Commerce 40-12. So Lone Oak is sitting at 1-4 and 0-1, and they're going to try to get back in the race against Van Alstyne. This was a game last year. Van Alstyne won 38-24, and we'll see what happens there. It had been a while since Van Alstyne had lost a district game. They had won 11 straight going into that game against Pottsboro last year. Lone Oak has struggled defensively. They've allowed at least 40 points in their last 4 games. So this could be a high-scoring game for Van Alstyne. In the loss to Pottsboro, they were able to put up over 300 yards of offense. Timothy Rosenthal completed 13 to 25 passes for 207 yards. Draylon Davis had a majority of that. He had 5 catches for 114 yards. Jake Carroll led the way on the ground, 14 carries for 90 yards. So I would expect Van Alstyne to bounce back this week. Like I said, they're in that mix in the middle early on where you want to try to get those wins. And like I said, they've already played Pottsboro. That may be to their benefit going forward because they can beat some of these other people along the way and at least try to lock in a playoff spot here in the next couple weeks. We head down to District 5-3A Division 2, and both teams are active in that district this week. The first game is Gunner traveling out to Holiday. This was a game that last year decided the district championship, which Gunner held on to. However, Holiday is coming off their district opening loss. They lost 20-14 against City View last week after starting with the bye. So right now, that kind of changes the dynamic of the district. City View and Gunner are the 2 teams that are probably viewed as the favorite. Henriette is also 2-0, and we'll get to them when we talk about SNS. But everybody else has a loss, and at this point, people thought that Gunner Holiday would have been the deciding game for the top spot in this district. So this is definitely a switch. So Holiday could be in a little bit of trouble if they fall to 0-2, but they could also bounce back nicely because there's a chance that they're playing the 2 best teams in the district right off the bat. But it does put some pressure on them. Gunner's sitting at 5-1 and 2-0. They're coming off a 48-0 victory over SNS. Their defense is doing what they normally do. They've only allowed 61 points in 6 games. The past 4 games, they've only allowed 2 touchdowns total. SNS only had 7 yards of offense last week, so Gunner's back to being the Gunner defense that we've expected to see, and they kind of dominated this district, especially on the defensive side, and that's looking like that's taking place this year. They were up 42-0 or 41-0, excuse me, at halftime last week against SNS. Peyton Lowe returned a punt for a touchdown to go with a touchdown run. Clayton Reed had 3 touchdowns. He caught 2 TD passes from Mitchell Brewer, and he also ran in a score. And Martin Garcia returned an interception, 15 yards for a score, as Gunner rolled to that victory there. SNS is sitting at 0-6, 0-2 as they host Henrietta. Like we mentioned, Henrietta's in a good spot to clinch a playoff spot. They're already 2-0. If they can come away with this win over SNS, they'll be sitting at 3-0, and they essentially will have all the tiebreakers that they'll need going forward. And this is a big spot for them as well. If they win, they'll have already matched their win total from last year. So they're improved over last year. They've shown that so far. Although this was a game last year, Henrietta only won at 21-9. So you never know. They got to go on the road. It's a long road trip. SNS is trying to avoid their 18th straight loss, which would tie for the second longest losing streak in school history. That was from 2010 to 2011. And like I said, things have been kind of up and down for them. They would have a good week, have a bad week. Last week, obviously, like we mentioned, was a bad week. They really couldn't get anything going against Gunner, and that's a team that a lot of people have struggled against. So we'll see what happens in that one. It might be a little trap game for Henrietta. Like I said, they might be looking ahead to see some of the big games that they have left on their schedule. So that'll be interesting after they make that long road trip over here to Sadler. In District 9 3A, we only have one team playing. Whitewright is the team that has the bye this week. So they're going to be interested to see what happens in the district because they're sitting at 0-2. And everybody else is going to play, so we'll see what happens. The team that is back on after having the bye last week, Bells, they're going to pay Prairieland a visit. Bells is sitting at 2-3 and 1-0, and Prairieland is 2-4, 1-1 after they got on the board in district play last week with a 48-29 win against Leonard. Bells is in an interesting spot because Cooper is sitting at 2-0, and Blue Ridge, which had the district bye the first week, they are also 1-0. So everybody else has a loss. This would go a long way towards setting Bells up to return to the playoffs again after they made it last year as well. A win, and Cooper is playing Blue Ridge. I forgot to point that out as well. So if Bells wins, the only undefeated teams would be the Panthers and the Cooper Blue Ridge winner. So again, you'd still be in line to have a shot at the district title, and you'd also solidify some playoff standing depending on how things go with that. Last week, Prairieland had 48 points. That's the first time in 13 games dating back to last season that they've scored more than 30 points in the game. So that was a good offensive outburst for them. So that might be something to watch for. This was a game last year that Bells won 59-12. The Panthers rushing game is doing what we'd expect from a Dale West slot T type of offense. They're averaging 279 yards on the ground. Renanglo Priest came back from injury 2 weeks ago, and they look to be back on track, so that'll be interesting to see what happens there. We get into District 5-2A Division 1. These are district opening games for the 5-team district. It's a small district, so there's only 4 games that are going to be played, and 4 of the 5 teams will make the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out there. Collinsville is at Valley View. Collinsville comes in at 3-3, and Valley View comes in at 3-2. Valley View did not play last week; they used their bye last week. While Collinsville is coming off a 60-0 loss against Lindsay, so Collinsville is looking to bounce back in a really big way. This was a defensive struggle last year. Collinsville won 15-6. I don't know if necessarily that's the way that this game is going to trend this year. And they're very familiar with each other. They've played each other every year for the last decade, so maybe that had a little bit to do with it. Valley View has, when they win, the defense is really good. So they're 3-2, and the 3 wins, they've only allowed a touchdown in each of those wins. So that'll be interesting to see what's happening in regards to that. Collinsville Collinsville, like we said, the loss last week, everything just went wrong in that one. And that's not the way that you want to go into district play. But it also could not mean anything. Like I said, you have a small district. You really only have to beat one team, to get in. And that'll be interesting to see if they can bounce back from that. They're another team, the Pirates, that have, things have gone well, and they've gone bad, especially on offense. Half of their games they've only scored in double digits, so that's something that they're going to have to try to rebound from. And also in that district, Tom Bean, they have the bye this week, so the bye came at a bad time for them. They're 2-4, but they've won their last two. They beat Arrow last week, 34-6. And that was a game that, after getting that first win the week before when they beat Chico, you almost wish you didn't have the bye. You want to keep playing when you're on a roll like that. But they have a quarterback change there. Ryan Weems took over, and they've scored, like I said, in the 30s each game. So Tom Bean's going to be anxious to get back on the field on the 18th, so they can get going there. And then the last team, that we normally talk about is Tioga. They're in an even smaller district, in District 9-2A Division 2. That district only has 4 teams in it, and because of that, all those teams qualify for the playoffs. So everybody is in from this point on. It's just about seeding. Tioga is 2-4. They are coming off a 49 to 40 loss against Alvord. And like we said, if you look at the teams so far in that district, Munster and Cumbie are both 4-2, and Era, as we mentioned, after their loss to Tom Bean, they're 0-5. So Tioga and Era have the bye this week. Munster and Cumbie are going to play. That's probably a game where the winner obviously has the inside track to the district title, and we'll see how things shake out. I think Tioga's in a really good spot to at least get third place. Obviously, I think Tioga Era, when they play here in a couple of weeks, that's going to be probably the deciding factor for third and fourth. And then the question is, can the winner of that game compete against the Munster-Cumbie loser, which if I had to guess, I'm going to guess would be Munster. Munster would win that game, so you'd be going up against Cumbie. But like I said, this is all for seeding. Everybody is in the playoffs there. So Tioga is going to try to rebound after their loss last week and be ready for district play for them when that starts in next Friday. So a short list this week, like I said, not as many games, and we'll have not a whole lot to recap next week because of the teams that are playing, but we'll be back to the normal schedule for the most part. A couple of these districts have uneven number of teams, so some people might have their byes coming up, and we'll get to those as we get to those. So again, that's the Week 7 preview and the Week 6 recap. And as a reminder for next week, we'll be visiting with Sherman head coach J.D. Martinez as the Bearcats come off their bye and get ready for the final month of their district action. So check out that when that's posted next week as well. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.